I was very interested to see the video put out by Caolan Robertson yesterday evening about Fidias Panagiotou, the Cypriot YouTuber turned MEP with a focus on Moscow, the pro-Kremlin posturing, and this confrontation, which he doesn't really get the best of Caolan. Caolan doesn't really pull his punches here. It's a brilliant video. Please look at it. But it's rather surreal. Fidias, I think I would like to call him Fidias or Anoitos, the Fidias the Fool, or Fidias or Efieris. Anoitis, the genial fool, because he comes across as very genial, but frankly rather odd. This man propelled into politics by TikTok virality rather than any obvious political insight, now accused credibly of acting as a de facto Russian asset, and he calls himself a professional mistake maker. Rarely has a self-description been more apt. And this is a story of a political influencer with more subscribers than principles, whose grasp of diplomacy is so tenuous that he journeyed to Moscow during the Victory Day celebrations as Russia continues its illegal and brutal war in Ukraine and tries to defend the illegal plebiscites, and B, the stealing of children, the kidnapping of children. First of all, the vote. On May the 8th, the European Parliament debated a resolution calling for the return of some 20,000 Ukrainian children abducted by Russia, a war crime under international law. 516 MEPs voted in favour, 3 voted against. One of them was Fidias. And after widespread condemnation, he scrambled to change his vote to an abstention, citing confusion and distrust of the sources. Zelensky's website and a Yale study funded by the US. This isn't skepticism; it's denial. It's toadying in the service of the Kremlin. When pressed on this in a withering interview by Caolan Robertson, a masterclass in journalistic confrontation, Fidias had the gall to suggest some of the children might want to stay. Well, one struggles to imagine a more grotesque misunderstanding of both consent and of war crime. And just a day later, after this vote, Fidias flew to Moscow claiming he was there to begin peace talks, as if he was some TikTok Kissinger. Maybe he's getting his inspiration from Donald Trump. Donald Trump, of course, is the reality TV peace talker. He's not had much success. He met with Russian politicians, did Fidias, posed for photographs, put out content drenched in euphemistic praise and false equivalence. We have to talk to Russia, he said, just like we talk to Turkey. Well, this is the favoured sleight of hand, comparing Turkey's 1974 invasion of Cyprus with Russia's ongoing assault in Ukraine. But while Cyprus remains tragically divided, there's no equivalence in the timing, tactics, or the toll. Cyprus is not under active missile assault, Ukraine is. And using Cyprus's trauma to excuse or deflect from Russian atrocities is both offensive and opportunistic. The third point is Fidias was elected with a 19.4% Cypriot vote. And he claimed in this interview that 70% of Cypriots supported him. It's just under 70% didn't support him. A numerical inflation worthy of Soviet Politburo minutes. He's used social media polls to decide how to vote in the European Parliament, and at times he crowdsources his political affiliations. This isn't direct democracy, it's dereliction masquerading as populism, and he ought to know better. In the Robertson interview, Fidias flounders when asked why he hadn't been to Ukraine. If he cared so much about peace, he confessed, "To be honest, I'm afraid." When Asked why he cited fake referenda or referendums in occupied territories, he changed the subject. When asked why he attended Russia's Victory Day, he lied, first denying it, then minimising it. It makes for difficult and fascinating watching. But you've got to be really clear. A referendum, and I really don't like the Latin plural because it's a modern word. A referendum is invalid if it's conducted at gunpoint. The referendums in the oblasts and in Crimea were conducted at gunpoint. They are completely invalid. They are spurious. Caolan's interview with Fidias was a stitching up of the most surgical kind. Fidias, who thrives on prankster energy and juvenile virility, virility, yes, suddenly found himself up against someone with receipts, with evidence, with moral clarity, and with the conviction of somebody who lives in Ukraine. And he looked, forgive the bluntness, Fidias looked completely out of his depth. Why does this matter? Because this is not a joke. Fidias sits in a chamber where decisions are made about war, about aid, about sanctions, about international law, and his presence on Russian soil during the Victory Day parades while missiles were falling on Kharkiv and children were still being forcibly relocated was not just ill-advised, it was morally indefensible. He's not the only one. He's not the only one. What was it? Fitzo, who was also there. Even the Cypriot president, Nikos Christodouliadis, has distanced himself from Fidias, calling the trip a mistake. The European Parliament is now reportedly considering consequences, but the damage is already done. Fidias has become a poster boy for every authoritarian regime seeking to discredit European unity and muddy the waters of truth. He says his critics are just haters, but sometimes opposition is not hatred. It's defence of decency. And we shouldn't be charmed by the novelty of TikTok populism dressed up as politics. Fidias is not a refreshing outsider. He's an unserious man in a serious time, one whose influence comes not from argument but from algorithms. He's proven himself unwilling or unable to distinguish diplomacy from complicity. And until he visits Ukraine, engages seriously with the victims of this war, and confronts the consequences of parroting Russian propaganda, he deserves neither our indulgence nor our platform. And all praise to Caolan for getting this interview off the ground, for showing us exactly what this fool has said. Exactly what he said. Fidias or Onoitos. Fidias, the fool. But fools can do damage.